I'm ChangeDaChannel, and this is Debunk This, a show for debunkers to do their thing, as well as for the choir to have a reference point. So many people find it hard to believe that we're being poisoned, tested on, lied to, that plans are documented to control and contain us, as well as kill us by the powers that be. That indeed conspiracies exist, and that not everyone who speaks of it is a nut job, or else you're going to have to call yourself a nut job. I mean, because whether it's OJ, Michael Jackson, 9/11, Rodney King, everyone speaks of conspiracies. Now, this show isn't about why they do what they do. It's about the fact that it has and is being done. Now, this show won't be covering hours worth of evidence. We will focus on some elements, keep it simple, and keep it to the point. False flag operations are covert operations used to deceive the public in such a way that the operations appear, though, that they were carried out by other entities. The name is derived from the military concept of flying false colors. That is, flying the flag of a country other than one's own. False flag operations are not limited to war and counterinsurgency operations and do not have to be carried out by the ones who utilize it for their means. Now, I know we can go through an endless list of false flag operations, whether planned or events themselves being taken advantage of by the powers that be, but we're only going to go through a few to illustrate that this is something that has been going on and continue to go on in many facets of our existence today. I mean, whether it's a friend blaming you for something that they did or governments blaming others for their actions, false flags are alive and well today. On the 18th of July in 64 AD, Rome, the then capital of the Roman Empire, was almost consumed by fire. This has become known as the Great Fire of Rome. Most historians blame Nero, the then emperor, for causing this blaze. The fire broke out in the merchant area of the city and burned for 6 days and 7 nights. Almost 70% of Rome was destroyed. Rumors arose which accused the emperor of ordering the torching. There was also speculation of him standing at the summit playing his lyre as flames devoured the world around him. These rumors were never confirmed. There are also reports of Nero rushing to Rome from his palace and running about the city all night without his guards, directing efforts to quell the blaze. These rumors did not stop, and Emperor Nero was looking for a scapegoat. Nero started spreading the word that a young religious cult, the Christians, had started the Great Fire. The citizens of Rome bought this lie. Peter was crucified upside down at his own request, and Paul was beheaded. Hundreds of others were fed to the lions and smeared with tar and set on fire to become human street lamps. Now, the fire had devastated a vast area of Rome, and this is where Nero built his palace, which he had plans for before the Great Fire. Now, one should not question whether Emperor Nero started the fire or not. His reaction was to blame the Christians, even though there was no evidence of them starting the fire. This is the first documented example of a false flag operation in history. On February 15, 1898, an explosion ripped through the American battleship Maine, anchored in Havana Harbor, sinking the ship and killing 260 sailors. Americans responded with outrage, assuming that Spain, which controlled Cuba as a colony, had sunk the ship. The Hearst Press, owned by William Hearst, who was pushing for war, accused the Spanish, claiming that the explosion was caused by a remote-controlled mine. Immediately, the U.S. Navy conducted an investigation, and it concluded, indeed, that the Maine had been blown up by a mine. The Spanish, however, claimed that the explosion occurred from within the ship due to faulty wiring. 2 months later, the slogan, "Remember the Maine," carried the U.S. into war with Spain. Later investigations revealed that the explosion originated inside the Maine, and there was either an accident, such as a coal explosion, or some type of time bomb inside the battleship. Divers investigating the shipwreck found that the armor plates of the ship were blown bending outwards, not inwards. Just another example of reaction to blame other elements, even though there was no evidence of them doing the action, and as a matter of fact was found to be the opposite, which was almost certainly knew by the U.S. Navy. On February 1st, 1964, Operation Plan 34 Alpha commences. U.S. and South Vietnamese naval forces initiate Operations Plan 34 Alpha, which calls for raids by South Vietnamese commandos operating under American orders against North Vietnamese coastal and island installations. Although American forces were not directly involved in the actual raids, U.S. Navy ships were on station to conduct electronic surveillance and monitor North Vietnamese defense responses under the program called Operation DeSoto Patrols, which were part of Operation 34 Alpha. The top secret program consisting primarily of covert actions against the North Vietnamese. DeSoto Patrols, Special Ops, were U.S. Navy destroyer vessels equipped with mobile van of signals intelligence used for intelligence collection in hostile waters. On August 2, 1964, North Vietnamese patrol boats responding to a Operation Plan 34 Alpha attack by South Vietnamese gunboats against the North Vietnamese island attacked the destroyer USS Maddox, which was conducting a DeSoto mission in the area.
Call a group of 15, 20 people together from the Armed Services and Foreign Relations, tell them what happened. A good many of them are saying to me,
right, I've been thinking about this myself, and I thought that
they're going to start an investigation if you don't, and you got Dirksen up there, and he's saying you got to study it further and say to Mansfield, now the president wants you to get the proper people, and we come in, and you say they fired at us. We responded immediately, and we took out one of their boats and put the other two running, and we're putting our boats right there, and we're not running on any.
Are to destroy.
That's right.
Right. We're going to go, and I think I should also, or we should also, at that time, Mr. President, explain this Op Plan 34A, these covert operations. And there's no question but what that had bearing on it. And Friday night, as you probably know, we had 4 TP boats from Vietnam, manned by Vietnamese or other nationals, attacked 2 islands. And we expended, 1,000 rounds of ammunition of one kind or another against them. We probably shot up a radar station and a few other miscellaneous buildings. And following 24 hours after that, with this destroyer in that same area, undoubtedly led them to connect the two events.
Well, say that to Dirksen, and you notice Dirksen says it's...
This ship is allegedly to be attacked tonight. We don't like to see a change in operation plan of this kind at this time, and we don't think it achieves any international purpose. So certainly no military purpose is served by it. Now, this is an action that we might well wish to consider after the second attack, but I think it would be inappropriate. General Wheeler agrees, and Dean Rusk agrees. Inappropriate to provide the task force commander that authority. There will be ample time for us after a second attack to bring this problem to your attention, and you can then decide how far you wish to. President, we just had word by telephone from Admiral Sharp that the destroyer is under torpedo attack. I think I might get Dean Rusk and Mac Bundy and have them come over here, and we'll go over these retaliatory actions, and then we ought to...
I sure think you all agree with that, yeah.
And I've got a category here. I'll call it to them.
Now, where are these torpedoes coming from?
Well, we don't know. Presumably from these unidentified craft that I mentioned to you a moment ago. It seems to me State and we and George Reedy ought to agree now on a statement that could be made by one of the departments, I presume the Pentagon. But before doing that, I wanted to ask your permission to do so. The statement that we would make, I would propose, would simply say that during the night hours, the 2 destroyers were attacked by patrol boats. The attack was driven off. No casualties or damage to the destroyers. We believe several of the patrol boats were sunk. Details won't be available until daylight.
That's okay.
All right,
I just go and put that out.
All right.
And after this ghost attack that didn't even happen, the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, officially known as the Southeast Asia Resolution Public Law 88-408, was a joint resolution of the United States Congress, which was passed on August 7, 1964, and paved the way for the United States' involvement further in the Vietnam War. A memo of a 2-hour meeting between President Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair at the White House on January 31, 2003, nearly 2 months before the invasion of Iraq, reveals that President Bush made it clear that the U.S. intended to invade Iraq, a sovereign nation, whether or not there was a second UN resolution, and even if UN inspectors found no evidence of banned Iraqi weapons programs. President Bush told Mr. Blair that the U.S. was so worried about the failure to find hard evidence against Saddam that it thought of flying U-2 reconnaissance aircraft planes with fighter cover over Iraq painted in UN colors. He also added that if Saddam fired on them, that he would be in breach of the UN resolutions. Now, we all know about the WMDs and all of that. We could just go on and on and on, but we need to focus on a few for the existence of false flags. Now, in conclusion, these things have been going on and continue to go on this very day. We see it on the TV all the time. Events occurring that people will use for their political gains, regardless of if they plan them, have foreknowledge of, or just utilize the events. Most recent, I mean, we've had people pointing fingers at Obamacare opponents for attempted bombings. I mean, even though groups like the Pakistan Taliban take responsibility, it's all about pointing a finger and pushing the agenda. So to all the debunkers and the deniers out there who wonder where we come up with this stuff from, I just say, click the links. Click the links and see for yourself. Don't take my word for it.
Now debunk that.
Anyhow, this has been Debunk This. I'm ChangeDaChannel. I'll catch y'all next time, and I'm out.